Okay, so there are other things that work really nicely. This is an onion bag. Where'd my papers go? Hang on, I've had a moment. And so you've just kind of got, now when you're using something like this that's got lots of little holes, you've really got to push into those little gaps as much as you can. Again, without puncturing the surface, because I've got the little tabs are still on there as well. That's better. So I've got a much better amount of ink. So that's the amount of ink you want. It's not too much. It's not sloppy at all. I should have been doing it over here in the first place. So my apologies for mucking that up. In your things, you've got different papers. This is poster paper, and it's quite shiny. Works beautifully. Picks up the ink really well. Some surfaces are just awesome. So you can see there's really complex, patterns that are left, and quite interesting either way. The other thing that you can do is, I'll just get this going a bit better, is you can add more than one colour. So you could work with two colours. And that can work quite nicely. And you can work with two colours but not really tightly mix them. It's a bit hard for you to see what's going on there, but I can see the two colours. You'll see it better when I print it. So the two colours are more or less side by side. And you can use lovely things like, this is just a thing of ribbons, little fine ribbons. And I'm going to run that over the top of an old one. So this is going to go over the top of a existing one. So layering techniques are great. So if you go through your pile, find ones that you don't really care about either way, and then you can maybe mix up a contrasting colour and you can start to work over the top of them. And sometimes you get really fantastic, quite accidental results. Like that, where we can still see the little bits of where the leaves were, but we're seeing other colours as well. And you can see really fine levels of detail. So it works really nicely, that kind of thing. And these are dry enough that I can stack them on top of each other without them sticking. Some other examples of that sort of thing, there's an example of the bag. And you can see here there's lots of muck in answer to Deb's question earlier. There's lots of muck on the outside edge, but I actually think it adds to it. I'm not too fussed about it. Other examples of layering, so there's layering using complementary colours, so the orange over the blue, so an existing print and then the orange print's been put over the top of it. Works quite nicely. String is lovely, and in this case we've got string over brown, craft colour, which is quite lovely. Mixed colours in this case. The leaves. And then you can potentially do like a series. So you can see here I've done a bit of a series of that knot, and there's a whole series of different versions. That one's on an old envelope, and these are over the top of other ones. And sometimes, you know, you can build up 2 or 3 or 4 layers of ones that are over the top of others and get really interesting results. So out of that one item, you can see I've produced, you know, a massive series of images just using that one knot. So, you know, don't be afraid to really push, you know, push ideas, you know, significantly. If you get something that you like, just go, yeah, I really like this, I'm going to work with it more. A couple of other things. This is like a beaded necklace, like a chunky kind of necklace. And that made quite lovely, you know, reverses. In this case, I did it and then I I did it, printed it, took the beads off, printed it again on the same one. So I got that repeat of both the image and the light areas. So that can be quite interesting. There's lots of different, I'll just think another plate up. Talking too much and letting the ink dry. I've got a little bit of detergent just in a little container that I can add to that too, just because it is quite warm. So there's a whole series of other things you could use. This one is a coffee cup, little coffee cup thing. And you've got a lot of this stuff in, you know, there's a little circular thing, and most of these I've put in your I'm just sort of putting these on just to show you what they can do. And, you know, you could even layer beyond that. So this is just some interesting stretchy fabric stuff. That might be going too far. So again, you've got to kind of feel your way around to know where those little circles in this. So you can see how you can get, so you could do stuff that's really structural and that's, you know, quite defined, and that will work really nicely as well. So it doesn't have to be all kind of organic. You might go for really structural, man-made stuff. I'm going to go over the top of this one. Yeah, so those leaves underneath are just giving it another dimension, just pushing it a little bit further. So that can work really nicely. So any of those kinds of things are good. The paint that I'm using at the moment is a chrome acryl, so that that brand of chroma quill, which are quite reasonably priced. That seems to be working a lot better, so I probably should have used that in the first place. Sometimes it's as simple as, you know, something like this, and I'm just going to as best I can. And this is the poster paper. This is a fantastic way to use up scrap paper, so any paper that you've got that's just been kind of hanging around, really great way to use it up. And it takes a really beautiful, like makes a really lovely, impression. Equally, you could print on the front of these. It doesn't have to be on the back. It's kind of interesting on the front. Yeah, so we're getting these interesting things. Now you can see there that there's some marks coming up. They'll be just little bits of dust or things like that. I just don't worry about them too much. It doesn't matter, you know. It's not the sort of thing that's about being perfect. It's much more about just kind of, you know, play. So I don't stress about that kind of thing. So remember, I've got in this mix, I've definitely got some detergent just to loosen it up because it's fairly warm. As I said before, anything that's got a, where'd it go? You want something and you can't find it. How annoying. I've lost what I was looking for. Never mind. Oh, there it is. Now I find it. So anything that's got a textured surface is going to work just fine. But it's nice to think about how it's going to work from the standpoint of a design sort of sensibility. So do be thinking about, you know, does that work? This is a bit, I'm overloading it a bit just so you can get a sense of how the different materials. This is a existing print I'm going over the top of. The other thing I find is that every now and then you've just got to go, right, stop, because it's really addictive and it's hard to stop. So every now and then you kind of got to go, whoa, I need to stop. I've made a massive mess, and just stop and clean up and regroup. Have a look at the images, sort through them, and then start again. So that one's not much happening there, but on the next one we should get some nice impressions of these interesting this time I'll use some it's a bit short, sorry, I'm just trying to find some other papers to try. It's just some of that brown craft paper. The little manila folders are really lovely. They print really nicely because they've got a really nice smooth surface. Beautiful. So you can see, really super detailed. So you could build up, you know, really interesting, quite detailed surfaces. I'm just going to run a second print off of that because there's bits still on there. Yeah, look at that. See how that's a folder, but it's a shiny folder? It's like an old, shiny, classy manila folder, which is quite nice, as opposed to a bog standard. So sometimes there's a third print that can be taken. You might decide, I know I think everyone got a stenciled letter of some sort. You might decide to make a stencil or to use a stenciled letter. I did a whole series that had sort of X marks the spot, and that became a bit of a thing for a while. And that can be interesting, you know, to work with as well. The other thing that you can do is cut out stencils. So I often work with two colours. So I'm working with, I've got the blue and the red, and I'm working with those two colours in combination. And I find often that can work really nicely. And I could use somewhere, I think I showed you last week, I cut some simple shapes out. It'll do. But again, it's something you need to prepare beforehand. What's that going to be? And I could have equally cut out, so that I used the other version. So instead of the shapes, I could have done the background. So I've got that as an interesting starting point. And these are also interesting because they've got colour on their undersides. And you could go fluoro, like fluoro paints work really beautifully. So, you know, you could go like fully fluoro. This is your opportunity to really let colour sing. So you can get that kind of, that's not a great result on that colour, but you can get that sort of thing where you've got positives and negatives. That's going to work probably better over a more textured surface, I would suggest, would be probably better. And just grab, sorry, I've got piles. See, I'm getting into that sort of piles of stuff everywhere mode. Just a bit. Go crazy outside my window. This time I'm going to use an existing print. Yes, that's quite interesting. So over the top of a print that wasn't so interesting, you can see it's, you know, building up for to something else. And this time I use that. And this time I'm just going to use some old manila folders but they're a bit small, so I'm not going to worry too much. I'm going to put two on, which could then be joined later. Can you see, is the video delayed? Like, are you seeing it delayed? Are you seeing just a blank tray at the moment, or are you seeing me with the coloured paper?
Blank tray.
Yeah, it's a bit slow. Hang on, I just got to get the charger. It's only just caught up. I don't know why it's slow. I'll just let it catch up. So can you hear me talking now? Yeah. Yep. So I'm going at a different speed. Oh God. Okay. Now you've caught up. No, you haven't. I've gone to get the, yeah, so it's definitely going at a reduced speed.
Wow.
So you can see those papers are really lovely, and using a bright coloured background is really lovely, like works, you know, really well. So I thoroughly, you know, recommend using those old manila folders. And if you've got a stash of them at home, you know, start looking for that kind of thing that, you know, can work really well. So you can cut yourself stencils, and I'm just going to show you some examples. Okay, varied surfaces. So some of these are done on, so for example, this is done on paper. These are, you know, science journals, and they're just old tags placed onto them. So you've got all these kind of interesting, you know, scientific diagrams and terminology and so forth. Melways, that's good. Just bills and things that come in the mail. Bits of paper, so smaller scaled pieces of paper that you can then join together. So you can see that joins together to make a piece, larger piece. This is embossed wallpaper, so that kind of thing, like flocked wallpaper. Old thing on mapping and stuff. That's mulberry paper, so, you know, sort of a very textured surface. That's a paper that's, yeah, just an old poster paper. Insides of envelopes. So, you know, you can see the envelope pattern. They can be really great. I think I've put in some paper from some books, so have a look to see if there's some paper from books. Yeah, so and that's a bit of card. So just look around for other things that you might have that you could use as a surface that would work. Stencils. Now, there's an interesting thing that can happen with stencils. Let's get back to here. So, when you use stencils, so what I did with this one is I just cut out, it was a picture of a girl sitting on a stool. And I cut it out and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I put it on there and I did the print. So I put it, it was over the top of another print, and I did the print. And then I did the second print, and this is what happened. So when I peeled that away, it left an impression of the actual print. It doesn't happen all the time. Seems to depend on the quality of the magazine and how the print's sort of laid onto the surface of the magazine. So Kitty, you might know more about that, but I think it's maybe, like I know Frankie magazine, I think these came from Frankie magazine, which is kind of a matte, it's a slightly matte, not super shiny stock. So something about it that leaves an impression like this, which is quite beautiful and entirely accidental. And then I tried and couldn't get it to work again. But then, you know, so every now and then I do it and it works. So you can see there's the stencil and you can just make out the picture.
It might work with something you print out of your printer at home too. Because
yeah, give that a try. Give it a try. So you can see varying levels of success. But kind of interesting to work with silhouette shapes. Like, you know, there's one that I was obviously thinking about using. Or, you know, there's one that I could use. So it's a matte paper. That Frankie paper is a matte paper. Like I did the positive stone shapes before, I could also cut out a negative and do it that way. So, yeah, it goes like that. So that's kind of a good way to work as well. And you can, again, work over the top of things, work over the top again. So you can see I've done layers of them. But they can be really nice. So that's using a template, but in the reverse of what I was doing that I just showed you before. Torn papers. So in this case, this is torn altogether, but this is just a couple of strips of torn paper towel sat over the top of an existing print and then reprinted. So stencils of all types are really interesting to do and well worth having an exploration of. You can also be more painterly, so you can use more paint like I did in that first couple, and you can actually build up really interesting surface textures. So you can get those two joined together, so you get really deeply layered. You know, this is it's quite thick, so quite deeply layered surfaces. Needs to be really dry in between. This is maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 layers. So some of these are quite layered up, but yeah, quite thick and opaque. So I just have a pile of the things that didn't work so well, and then I use that pile to reprint over the top of. Because I don't care about it so much, then I'm more willing to just try stuff out. This one's got a number of layers. This has got some gold in it, which is quite, I don't know if you can see that shine there. Which is kind of nice. If you've got a little bit of gold acrylic, you could try a bit of gold in the mix. But yeah, these are quite heavily textured and quite a different feel to what we were looking at before. That's another one of the gold ones. So hopefully, this is just some scrap paper, so I've just laid the separate little bits of paper down to make up a simple image. So hopefully out of all of that, this kind of should be something for everyone. So you'll find your own groove, and you might find a groove that's entirely different to what I've done. You know, like you might just find your own thing that is completely abstracted, or it might be completely organic, or it might be completely made out of you know, man-made, person-made structures. But what you are going to do is produce lots and lots. Now, of course, there's millions here because I've done it so many times, but you're going to produce lots and lots of stuff. Those of you that are parents that want to do it with your kids, get old stuff. Get old things that the kids have done that they don't love anymore and use that stuff, because I think that's a way of just kind of repurposing stuff that didn't really have a use. So over the top of old drawings and things.